The most comprehensive DOJ consent decree is
widely considered to be the 2012 New Orleans Police Department consent decree, spanning over 110 pages and 490 paragraphs to mandate sweeping reform, and supposedly acted as a broad foundational model for constitutional policing. Consent decrees function as quid pro quo agreements, favor for a favor. A institution that protects PDF and trafficking rings created an agreement to protect a long-standing criminal enterprise, the NOPD. Quid pro quo agreements can become lawfare when used strategically to weaponize legal systems for political or adversarial gain, and when applied to public office, such agreements can constitute illegal bribery or extortion. Let's examine two mayors and a police union president's opinions on DOJ consent decrees.
I want to first acknowledge DOJ and thank them for their report, their hard work, effort, and time that they've spent in developing it. We certainly appreciate their acknowledgement of the efforts that have gone into the city of Memphis to date. And after carefully considering the information that we received from DOJ, we didn't believe that entering into any agreement in principle or consent decree right now, before even thoroughly reading the DOJ report, would be in the best interest of our community. It's crucial that the city has the time to do a thorough review and respond to the findings before agreeing to anything that could become a long-term financial burden to our residents and could, in fact, actually slow down our ongoing efforts to continuously improve our police department. The consent decree in Chicago has cost their city more than $500 million. The consent decree in Seattle has cost their city more than $200 million. In New Orleans, their consent decree has cost them more than $100 million. And from what I understand, in many cases, consent decrees are in place for at least 10 years or more. In some of these cities, crime has actually increased under a consent decree. And we can't risk that here, not in the city that I love, the city that made me everything that I am. We aren't alone in wanting to pursue a smarter way to make improvements. And we firmly believe that there is a better way. We believe we can make more effective and meaningful change by working together with community input and independent national experts than we can with a bureaucratic, costly, and complicated federal government consent decree.
Thank you all for being here today. I am Daryl Criplin, the president of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. PLEA proudly represents approximately 2,200 officers and detectives who honorably serve the Phoenix Police Department. We are frustrated and appalled by the Department of Justice's decision to release the findings report to the public and the media before allowing the decision makers and the department to review it. This tactic is nothing more than an irresponsible and unprofessional smear campaign against the men and women who have continued to courageously serve the community amidst dangerous and inflammatory rhetoric by political activists and violent attacks from criminals. The Phoenix Police Department has a long history of self-assessment and self-correction, as outlined in a letter that was prepared and disseminated by the City of Phoenix in January to the Department of Justice and the local media. In fact, the department is either in process or has already implemented several significant reforms, many of which the DOJ has called for in other agencies that they have investigated and bullied into federal oversight. The Department of Justice is not interested in making local police departments and the communities they serve better. This action demonstrates that they are only interested in removing control of local police from the communities that they serve through consent decrees that only enrich the monitors who are generally DOJ insiders. Consent decrees have a 30-year track record of significant increases in violent crime, hundreds of millions of dollars in unfunded costs, and a systemic destruction of police staffing and morale.
Now here's how New Orleans ended up in a DOJ consent decree. 2 days after his inauguration in May 2010, Mayor Mitch Landrieu sent a letter to Attorney General Eric Holder that began, "I am writing today to ask for your support and partnership in transforming the New Orleans Police Department into one of the best police forces in the United States. I have inherited a police force that has been described by many as one of the worst police forces in the country. The police force, the community, our citizens are desperate for positive change." So how did a New Orleans-Washington handshake turn to fists? That happened on January 11, 2013, when a federal judge made the DOJ consent decree official. The city declared that it wanted out, Mr. Landry said that the cost of the agreement would cause catastrophic damage to the city's budget. Landry added that the police decree went too far and called the Justice Department a kind of rogue agency. Again, in early 2013, New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu attempted to halt or renegotiate federal consent decrees for the police department and jail, arguing the $55 million project costs were unsustainable and created a gun to the city's head. Key details regarding the 2013 actions. Legal action. A federal judge denied the city's motion to delay the consent decree in February 2013, forcing the city to move forward with the reforms. Forcing monitor selection. Landrieu also criticized the high cost of the federally chosen monitors to oversee the process, preferring a cheaper option. Consent decree monitors are politically connected attorneys. Shepard Mullins law firm was chosen at a rate of $115,000 per month, totaling roughly $20 million, ending November 2025. These two monitors do not speak over their phone. They do not return voicemails or respond to emails. Here's NOPD's consent decree supposedly created to avoid costly litigation. The city of New Orleans, including the NOPD and the United States, collectively, the parties enter into this agreement with the goal of ensuring that police services are delivered to the people of New Orleans in a manner that complies with the Constitution and law of the United States. The full and sustained implementation of this agreement is intended to protect the constitutional rights of all members of the community. Here's a electronic police report documenting my first false arrest. False arrests are a federal crime. Highlighted below my name reads resident status. Police, the authority, labeled me as a Orleans resident. Again, the full and sustained implementation of this agreement is intended to protect the constitutional rights of all members of the community, improve the safety and security of the people of New Orleans, and increase public confidence in the New Orleans Police Department. So 1 year after entering into this agreement to assure police services are delivered to the people of New Orleans in a manner that complies with the Constitution and law of the United States, the NOPD refused to investigate over 1,000 SA cases. Yes, the 2013 NOPD consent decree explicitly required reforming SA investigations to address systemic gender bias, inadequate victim services, and poorly conducted investigations. The DOJ investigation found that NOPD was misclassifying S crimes and relying on stereotypical judgment. Again, 1 year later, a 2014 CNN report revealed the NOPD failed to adequately investigate over 800 crimes under a DOJ consent decree. That's contempt of court hundreds of times. Here's a report. Inspector, no sign of investigation in 111 New Orleans S crimes related calls under a DOJ consent decree. You can pause to read some of the terrible crimes the NOPD refused to investigate. Don't worry, the seasoned detectives' names were kept secret. No one was arrested. A couple of them eventually resigned. The Inspector General's findings indicate there was no effective supervision over these 5 detectives over a 3-year period, nor could there have been any effective supervision over the supervisors or any review of the outcomes of the cases assigned to these 5 detectives while under a DOJ consent decree. That same year, 2014, the chief of police hired to implement the consent decree was forced to resign. This writer writes, Chief Ronald Serpis was Mayor Landry's biggest mistake. Why? Because he was forced to resign in 2001. When Ronald Serpis took the NOPD superintendent job, he was still the chief of police in Nashville, where he resigned as chief under complaints of underreporting crimes and downgrading great cases to miscellaneous incidents. This writer goes on to write, worse, under Serpis leadership, complaints of underreporting of crimes and wait for it, downgrading great to assault complaints have jumped. Serpis's innovative ideas in New Orleans was Palantir, predictive policing secretly put in the hands of a protected criminal enterprise. The reason Ronald Serpis was forced to resign from the NOPD in 2001 was he encumbered a budget surplus, then worked with the company to make fictitious fraudulent receipts. They bought whatever they wanted, then shaved off the top. I mentioned lawfare earlier. What is lawfare? Lawfare is the strategic use or misuse of the legal system, institutions, and proceedings to achieve political or operational objectives, effectively substituting legal action for traditional warfare. It involves leveraging international or domestic law to hinder, delegitimize, or intimidate opponents. Military context. Here it is. Palantir has secretly been using New Orleans to test predictive policing technology. Palantir developed a predictive policing system in New Orleans that even city council members don't know about. What does Palantir do? Ask its CEO.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
Palantir started by spying on a city, now sells AI for war. New Orleans was a city. It was under a DOJ consent decree. AI is not a toy. It is a weapon. You can pause to read key takeaways. In 2012, Palantir quietly embedded itself into the New Orleans Police Department. Palantir secretly assigned residents algorithmic risk scores and helped police generate target lists, all without public knowledge. Pause to read the rest of this report. Furthermore, the NOPD also hired a CIA asset named Jeff Asher to run the Palantir software that was secretly targeting New Orleanians under a DOJ consent decree. Just ask New Orleans. Lawfare, substituting legal action for traditional warfare instead of prosecuting criminal cops, the DOJ allowed the NOPD to have a secret weapon to secretly target its residents. The NOPD was also allowed to perpetrate widespread violence against its community, another warfare tactic used to intimidate the residents of New Orleans under a DOJ consent decree. This PDF was allowed as evidence in a civil federal courtroom. Under a DOJ consent decree, the NOPD was also allowed to perpetrate widespread payroll fraud with impunity beginning in 2021, then 2022, then 2023, then 2024, and finally 2025. How come a professor is better at rooting out corruption in the NO than City Hall? The NOPD's Internal Affairs Division, the Office of Police Secondary Employment, the Independent Police Monitor, the Inspector General, the U.S. Justice Department, all of these agencies could or should play a role in ensuring the New Orleans police officers are being truthful and filling out timesheets. Dr. Skip Gallagher, a professor, uncovered the biggest payroll racket in years. Dr. Gallagher did it with public record spreadsheets and a passion for the truth, something that is apparently missing in City Hall and police headquarters. Dr. Gallagher spent 1,600 hours gathering and analyzing data and demonstrated that many cops were perpetrating payroll fraud. Thanks to Dr. Gallagher's work, the public now knows that the police department has not been tracking compliance and in fact claims not to have the capacity to do so. They had Palantir software. What were they doing with it? NOPD's overtime mismanagement raises fraud concerns again in 2025. The Inspector General said major incidents drove heavy overtime use. These criminals in costumes were allowed to log 260,000 overtime hours at the cost of $17 million in the first 7 months of 2025. The Bourbon Street attack was the major incident. $50 million went into NOPD's overtime, creating a $200 million city deficit. Dr. Gallagher said the payroll fraud has only worsened since he began investigating in 2021. The NOPD's consent decree was also explicitly designed to reform the Public Integrity Bureau. The decree aimed to fix a culture of cover-ups and improve how the department investigated its own officers. Let's see how this went. Police Association New Orleans City failing to reduce police exodus. PIB breaks law without consequence. That's according to the police union president. The union president revealed that former PIB head Arlinda Westbrook fabricated evidence against officers, omitted evidence that was helpful to officers, and falsified reports, all without consequence under a DOJ consent decree. The police union also asked the City Civil Service Commission and City Council to investigate PIB in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Every request was refused. Feds blast NOPD's investigation. What does that even mean, blast? Not indicted, not arrested, not malfeasance and obstruction of justice, blast. NOPD's Public Integrity Bureau once again refused to investigate criminal misconduct perpetrated by NOPD officer Jeffrey Vappi, and did it with a cavalier attitude. Here's the feds blasting. Monitor team review of PIB and administrative investigation process. That's wrong. It's a criminal misconduct investigation process. NOPD's first violation of its consent decree. That's malfeasance. NOPD's second violation of the consent decree. Obstruction of justice. NOPD's third violation. More malfeasance. 9 violations. No contempt of court. At least it's not 30 to 1,000 violations. That same 2023 monitor report confirms that the DOJ judge overseeing the consent decree was made aware by email. Right there, subject, continued payroll fraud by the NOPD. Payroll fraud is alive and well and extends into the upper ranks of the NOPD as well as the mayor's own security detail. As I've had mentioned to the OIG, IPM, mayor of the city, city council, Jonathan Aroni, and to the NOPD itself, an independent audit of the NOPD must be conducted. No independent audit and no investigation into the Public Integrity Bureau were ever conducted under a DOJ consent decree. The officer whose investigation violated the consent decree 9 times was eventually indicted on federal charges. Police corruption caused so much attrition, the municipal police employee retirement system deemed the NOPD partially dissolved due to severe staffing shortages. Despite all the corruption, Judge Susie Morgan okayed a 2-year sustainment period, even though the NOPD never reached full compliance with the DOJ consent decree agreement. That 2-year sustainment period, how can you reach sustainment when you haven't reached compliance? Turned into 9 months. And the consent decree ended November 19, 2025.